首先，说几件事啊，好像每天都。
Well, I have a few things to address before the class. It seems that we have something to address before the class every single day. Well, the first thing is that about 4 or 5 years ago, after we had some rectification of Larangar, we then were able to keep about over 100 staff members, and technicians, and people with professional skills to serve the Sangha with permits. And they are, of course, still striving their best to serve the Sangha. And there were some people who, though have permits, but they are not currently engaged in a lot of work. In the future, this group of people who have those special permits, who actually serve the Sangha in various aspects, can stay in Larangar. If some of you who are not really serving the Sangha, then it would be better for you not to stay. In general, if you are studying at home and all that, that's fine. But if you are serving the Sangha, and if you're in the spotlight and you're not really working or you're not really serving, then it may be better for you not to just hoard that permit, and then I think it takes up others' opportunities. Well, there are people who, after so many years, but not really working, not really serving the Sangha, then I think it's better for you not to have those permits anymore. Maybe you can return those permits back to the Khenpos and Khenmos so that others may have the opportunity to apply for those permits. Also, another thing I've noticed is that there are some lay practitioners, but the way they dress is very similar to monastics, especially the female practitioners. The female practitioners who wear something red and then wears the red-colored tops, just like the lamas. And then, since they're female practitioners, they have long hair as well. For people who are not very clear about who you are, and for people who are not aware of the Buddhist tradition, then they will have a sense of misunderstanding, wondering whether you are someone who is about to get ordained or someone who's about to get derobed. Yesterday, I saw quite a few who was wearing those red long skirts. Some may chose this particular dress code is because they want to blend in with this atmosphere and the crowds, that since everyone else is wearing red and maroon robes, and therefore they do as well. As lay practitioners, it is not allowed for the lay practitioners to wear the monastic's clothing. Also, the monastics to wear the lay practitioners' clothing unless they are about to get derobed. If I don't see those people wearing the inappropriate dress code over here, I hope the management team can pay attention. Also, the monastics, sometimes they would have long hair. Maybe because my mind is not clear, so apparently I see those impure manifestations. As monastics, we don't have long hair. Some of the monastics appear to be in that semi-lay practitioner, semi-monastic appearance, and that is very inappropriate. Also, those lay practitioners, also those monastics who got derobed, and if they were to return back to Larangar to attend the Dharma assembly and so on, that is permitted. But you're not permitted to live in Larangar. You're not allowed to be a resident in Larangar, because now we have a limited number of residents, a set number of residents. In the future,
不一定现在一样的，就现在是因为疫情期间，就是这个门口也是关得比较严的，就是
maybe the people who come into Larangar would be even more complex, because now we're still in the pandemic period of time where we have very limited numbers of people. But in the future, the Surta County and the surrounding hotels are all closed for business. Many authorities of Surta County are quite eager to open up, and not only Surta, in Durango, Xinlong, Garzi, Barma Daji in Qinghai province, as well as Sershu. In general, this area is suffering from the economic loss caused by the pandemic. Many places in Larangar, many places surrounding this area blame why we are closed for tourists, and that caused them to close their business. Because the Larangar Buddhist Academy is closed, they can no longer have their business to continue to survive and thrive. I've heard so many complaints about the closing of Larangar recently. So it is a precaution for our future. Now we have so many policemen standing at the gate, patrolling people and guard Larangar so that people from outside can get in. But we still have guests coming in from various ways. To have more visitors, there are some benefits. Since there are so many people coming in, then you don't need to hide yourself, and people won't feel that it is strange to see you being here, since there are such large crowds. And there are benefits associated to not having so many people, because nowadays we only hear the sound of tractors and the sound of the crows. So it's very quiet. I'm not so sure how the future will turn out to be, but I'm just saying that we need to be vigilant still with our management. That's about all.
Let's begin our class on the Surangama Sutra today. The Surangama Sutra, sometimes it's rather quite difficult to understand. I'm not sure if I'll be able to give you a good explanation on the sutra. When I prepare the lessons in the morning, I also felt that it was confusing. So I'm not sure how well I prepared the class today. Let's see how it goes. The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in billions of aeons. I now see it, here to receive and uphold it, avow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning, to liberate all beings. Let's generate the supreme bodhicitta. Let us begin our class on the Surangama Sutra. We've already covered on the 5 aggregates, the 6 entrances, and the 12 ayatanas, or the 12 places, and then the 18 dhatus. Currently, we're talking about how the 18 dhatus are simply the wondrous manifestation of the Tathagata. Out of the 18 dhatus, we've already talked about the ear faculty, the sound object, and the ear consciousness. We also covered how the ear, eyes, nose, tongue, and body.
6界的18界的时候呢，也会就是每一个根就是讲的啊，但是这个佛陀在这里就是用他的智慧来这个抉择，抉择的时候呢，每一个地儿呢就是都有不同的这个要道。
Explains it through his wisdom. Each of the point of view, each of the perspective is rather quite different. And there's such profundity in the different aspects of explanation. So through our study, I believe many of you felt that the wisdom of the Buddha is indeed very rare and quite wondrous. Each one of us, 就是我们的这个二根和什么咽根，或者是 We're very familiar since we've been familiarizing ourselves with the ear faculty and the eye faculty, all the ear, eye, nose, tongue, and body. We're very familiar with the function of it. We're very familiar with having all of these. However, we had never really looked into the nature of them or the wondrous manifestation, the wondrous function of those, or from the aspect of emptiness. Had we ever tried to look for the nature of all of those as being empty, indeed, we had never really delved into it at all. So when it comes to the study of the Surangama Sutra, it is quite meaningful, especially when we're looking at the 18 dhatus. If we were to refute the 6 consciousness within the 18 dhatus being the 6 objects, 6 faculties, and the 6 consciousness, if we were to refute the existence of the 6 consciousness, then naturally the faculty and the object will collapse. Throughout the process of analyzing the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind consciousness, I think it's quite important for us to look inwardly and observe our consciousness. We should understand that the 6 consciousness themselves, in fact, do not discern. According to the Buddhist logic and Abhidharma, the 6 consciousness, all the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, in fact, there is no discernment. We would be able to make the perception directly. That is called the 5 root consciousness, including mind consciousness, the 6th direct perception. How do we know if the sound is good or bad? How do we know if something looks beautiful or not? In fact, those would be discerned through our dualistic mind. This is quite important to understand. Some of the great masters, when they make the analysis, they would talk about how the eye consciousness doesn't have any discernment, doesn't have any dualistic thoughts to make the distinguishing aspects. Rather, when it comes to the discernment, it is through our dualistic mind, through our conceptions. What our eyes see, what our ears hear, those would be discerned by the conceptual mind. Those of you who studied Buddhist logic, you should be able to understand. If you want to understand the Surangama Sutra, you need to understand some aspects of the Surangama Sutra. You need to understand some of the Abhidharma and then Buddhist logic, the Madhyamika, including some of the Uttara Tantra Shastra. For those of you who studied those before, it would be easy for you to understand. Also, Surangama Sutra is different than the other sutras. When you look at a sutra such as Agama Sutra or the Prajnaparamita Sutra, sometimes it sounds much easier to understand. I probably shouldn't talk too much about these, otherwise it will take too long for me to complete today's lesson. Let's look at the content today. If we have a little bit more time, then I will go on to make more analysis, because at the end of the class you would probably be a little bit tired, and I would probably be a bit tired, and I don't want to end the class in a hasty way. Now let us look at the sutra. The Buddha said, "Moreover, Ananda, as you understand it, the ear and sound create the condition that produce the ear consciousness." What's that sound?
Huh? 好像这些不听话的老年人不要来啊！明天有，昨天也在那儿有一个人，真是，现在这些有点听话的时候不认真的，这些呢就是最好。
If you do not listen to the Dharma teachings attentively, it would be the best for you not to attend the class in the shrine hall.
就是说是这个啊，就是如说说明而。The
Buddha then says that is this consciousness produced because of the ear, such that the ear is its realm, or is it produced because of sound, such that sound is its realm? The Buddha then told Ananda, saying that, well, you should understand that the ear faculty and the sound object are the causes and conditions which produce the ear consciousness. But this ear consciousness, is it a product that completely relied on the ear faculty and calls the ear consciousness as realm, or does it rely on the object to be produced and is part of the realm based on such that the sound is its realm? Consciousness, is it a product of faculty, or is it a product of the object? In the Buddhist logic analysis, we talk about how though that consciousness do need to rely on the object, but simply by relying on the object is not the sound consciousness, and you would not say that it is the sound or the form. Rather, it is called the eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, but it doesn't really say it's the sound consciousness or the form consciousness. It is named as the consciousness to the faculty. They are named based on the faculty. After hearing the sound in the ear, is that ear consciousness is produced by relying on the ear. After listening to the ear consciousness, which does not have any discernment on thinking that this is a good music or that is a bad music, it is without any discernment. The ear consciousness simply receives the sound of music or sound that comes from the radio or from the teaching. And then to further look at the ear faculty and how ear faculty produce ear consciousness. Over here, the Buddha said that, Ananda, suppose the ear consciousness were produced because of the ear. The organ of hearing would have no awareness in the absence of both movement and stillness. The movement and stillness are the two types of dust or particles.
有一种是这个动摇的这个声音，就是有一
One
种是这个静
type
止的
of
声音。
particle
除了这两个
is
以外呢，
of
就
the
没有
movement,
了。
and the other
但是
one
这
is
两个
of
这
the
个
stillness.
声音呢，
Other than
就是
that,
应该
other
不会
than
显现的，因为你的
movement
这种
or
声
stillness,
势呢，
there
就是
is
二根
no
产生
third
的。那
possibility.
这样的话呢，外境
Now,
的
Ananda,
动
you
和
said
静
that
的这个尘呢，不
the
显现。
ear,
根不
the
称之
ear consciousness,
逼
the
就是
sound
无
is
所
produced
知
because
的
of the ear
但这样
faculty.
说来呢，也
For
是不
that
行的，因为
reason,
跟他自己的话呢，就是不
then
能就
the
是
organ of
成
hearing
为
would
知
have
觉
no
啊，就
awareness
是
in
大
the
家都知
absence
道，
of
我们这个
both
二根的话呢，就是
movement
它
and
是没有知觉
stillness.
的，它就是
We know
根呢
that
就是
the
不能
ear
这个
faculty
知觉
does
的话
not
呢，
have
那必
any
定呢就是没
awareness.
有这个素质啊，就是没有这个知觉。所以你刚才那个听到的这个声音的话呢，就是最终出来就是
The
一个
sound
根
that
是
you
没有知
hear
觉
for
的，
that
根是没有
reason,
知觉的
since
话呢，那
the
必定呢
faculty
就是它
itself
不会有
doesn't have
这个知觉
awareness,
的了啊，就是这
then
个是
the
一部
sound
分的
at the
观
end
察。
doesn't have
还有
awareness
呢，就是
either.
说知上无成啊，就是知上无成。那
Thus,
么
nothing
识
would
和
be
信貌，
known by it.
如果你说
Since
这
the
个
organ
就
would
刚才
lack
听到的这个
awareness,
声音呢，
what
就是
would
智
characterize the
知觉都
consciousness?
是不能成立的
Well,
话呢，
since there is
那
no
就是这个
awareness,
二识呢，就是怎么有信貌呢？啊，就是
then
如果
how
它
could
因为是耳
the
朵而产生
ear
的话呢，就是
faculty
现在的这个知觉肯定
has
是层面
any
是没有
of
的，
the
就是它
shapes or
它
sound
它这个
or
光二根的
appearances
音呢，就是它不可能有知
or
觉。那
character,
如果这样
any
的话
kind
呢，
of
那二识
characters.
呢，就是怎么有这个心想
If
呢？
the
啊，就是
ear
怎么有
faculty
信
doesn't
貌
have
呢？就是信
awareness,
貌的话
how
呢，
could the
比如说
ear
我们这个
consciousness
二
have
识的
any
话呢，就是本
characters?
来是就是它肯定就是让去这个蓝色的对镜、红色的对镜，
The
就是
ear
什么这个
consciousness,
四方形、三角形当，就
for
是它很多
example,
有这个现象吧，就是但这些现象的话呢，就没有
it
办法
could
就是得到，
perceive
就是这样一来的
the
话呢，
various objects such
那
as
这
the
个刚才
blue, red,
二根
and
森的话
in
呢，
the
就
different
是
shapes.
不能这个成立
If
的。
it has awareness, then
再这样
it
分析，就
definitely
还
would be
是
able
就是
to
用这个
perceive
二根
all
来
of
分
those
析。
shapes and
若
forms.
去问
But
神，
in this way,
无
they
动
are
静
not the
故
ear
闻
faculty anymore.
闻无
To
所
continue
成。
analyzing
如果你
like
说是
such,
这
you may
个
hold the ear
还要就是说是我还是去二问神的，就是不是什么那个其他的，
that
就是耳朵听到
hears.
的啊，就是如果他
So
片面要说是
you
我
still,
这个
if you were to
这
still
个
say
是依
to
靠
say
耳根
that
而听到
you
的，
hear
那这
because
样
of
的话
the
呢，
ear
就是
faculty.
因为动和静的这个外面
But
的
when
深层
there
的
is
是
no
没有的，就是
movement
耳根
and
上面哪里都
stillness,
没有。
there's no
无
particle
动的
of
这个无动和
movement
静
and
的这个深
stillness
层的缘
in
故
the
呢，你
object,
的这个问呢
then
就是无所
hearing
成立
cannot
的啊，
occur.
你的就刚才就是
How
所
could you
谓的
have
这个
any
你的
hearing?
听闻的话呢，
Since
因为
there
跟
is
外
no
面的
particle
声
of
音一
movement
点
and
关系
stillness,
都是
because
没有的，
if it
一
has
点关
nothing
系
to
都没
do
有
with
的
the
话呢，你
object,
只不过是口头上说说而已。
then how could
实
you
际上
hear
的
it?
话呢，你的真正的这个听闻呢，
You would
就是
not be
无
able
所
to hear
成立，就是
anything.
不能成立的啊，就不能成立的。
Since
那
the
你既
hearing
然不
doesn't
能成立
occur,
的话呢，
since the
云
hearing
和
doesn't
二
occur,
性杂
how
色
then
除
could the ear,
成，
which
命
are
为世
but
界，
physical
就是
forms,
那你为
unite
什
with
么
the
呢？
external
你的这个
objects to be
耳
called the
朵
realm of
耳朵的话
consciousness?
呢，就是这个如块，就大家都知道，我们有
The
些人耳
ears
朵
are
很
no
大
other
有些
than
人耳
just
朵
an
很小
organ.
的，就是好像
This
每个
piece
人的耳朵
of
都是。
this part
好
of
像
you
我
that
们
is made
在
of
成都有一
flesh.
次开会，
Some
然
people
后他
have
们后面
bigger
就是
ears
拍
and
一
some
个
have smaller ears.
照片，就是让有
Recently,
些人
I
说这
attended
个
a
虽然
meeting
看
in
不到我的
Chengdu,
脸，但是
and
从我的耳朵上
someone
看出来
apparently
我
took
是
a
谁。
picture from behind. And
然后因为
then
那个照
people,
片里面
after
呢，
seeing
就
the
是
photos,
我的我
told
这是
me
这个
that
侧
they
面的，
were
就是
able to
他们说是
recognize
从耳
that
朵上应该
it
看
was
得出
me
来你
sitting
是谁，
there
就是应
just
该是没
simply
法
by
就是
looking
说
at
的。所以
the
有时候
shape of
是
my
耳朵的
ears.
这个形状的话呢，就是也能认出来，就是这个是什么。就一般来讲的话呢，耳朵比较
Normally,
大的话呢，就是说是
in
福报比较大，就是是
normally
这个就
we
像
would
佛陀
say
一样
that
的，就是
people
就
have
就
bigger
有这种
ears,
说法，就是不管
have
怎么样呢，就是如
more
果就是我
merits,
们这
just
个
like
偏
the
要用
Buddha
二
has
根来
bigger
这个
ears.
听闻的
But
话呢，就是
that's
现在
just
是这个没
one
有声
say,
音的，
one
没有
very
动静的
popular
这样的缘故
folk
呢，就是其
saying.
实这个问是不
Anyhow,
成
we
立的。
do need to
那更何
use
况
the
说呢，
ear
就是你的
faculty
这
to
个耳朵的这
listen.
个心和，还有呢，就是
But if there is no sound, there's no particle of movement or stillness, then there would not be hearing at all, because the hearing cannot occur. How then could the ear, which are but physical forms, unite with external objects to be called the realm of consciousness? Our ears are no other than a piece of flesh. Some of them looks like a piece of leaf, and some probably looks like a type of bakery.
那么这个是其实是身体的一部分，就是它呢就是
ear itself is a part of body.
那么身体的部分的话呢，就是那么身体呢就是它
And the
是这
body
个身体呢就是借助的这个触称嘛，就是触
The
称。
body
就是我们
is
这个耳朵的话呢，本来是它的对境是声音的称啊，就
the
声称。
the
但
subject
是呢
that would
我们
receive
这
the
个耳朵
object
的
of
话呢，身体
touch.
的部分就是那就是跟那个声称呢
So
就是
the
扎在一
ear,
起
since
的
it's
声称扎在一起的
part
话
of
呢
the
那
body,
就变
then
成
it
了
should
这
be
个触
also
称，就是这个
mixed
声音
with
对境的触称。
the
如果声音对境的触称
receiving
的话
of
呢，
the
就是
object,
名
which
为
is
世界，
the
那
touch.
你对它的
In
这
this way, it
个
is very much
怎么会
mixed.
是成为那个
How
二世
would the
呢？
ear
就是二世的界呢？因为18界当中的话呢，
then
我们要
receive
现在这个
the
它规定
sound?
的是要二世是吧？二世的话呢，你如果是这个你的耳朵来听到的话呢，
If you hear the
是这个
sound
身体
through
的
your
部
ear
分。那
faculty,
这样的话呢，就是
but the
这个
ear,
耳朵
your
呢
ear
就是
faculty
实
is
际
part
上
of
是
your
这个
body.
身体的这个色相，身体的色相
And
呢，
the ear,
它所
since
借
it's
助的
a
这个
physical
对
part
境的
of the
称呢，
body,
实际上是这
then
个
the
触称啊，就是。那么如果
object that
触
it
称的话
receives
呢，
is
那你
touch.
对这个所带来的这个事啊，就是所带来的这种所
Then
产
the
生的事的话呢，
consciousness
那应该
that
是
it
这
should
个
produce,
圣事，就是并不
it
是
should
二
be
事，就是
the
名为事，就是怎么会是这个
consciousness of the
变
body
成这个
rather
你的
than the
二事呢？
consciousness of the
应该
ear.
是变成圣事了，就是不应该成为二事。则
Then
二
once
世
again,
界服
therefore,
从
how would the realm of the ear
遂仪，就是
consciousness be
那如果是
established?
它就是成为这个圣事的话呢，啊，就是圣事的
Since
话呢，
it's
那就是
a
你的
part
二世呢
of
就是
your
怎么
body
从建立
consciousness,
的了？
how
因为
could
你说
you
是这
say
个二
that
世
it
是
is
从耳根当中产生，但我们一
how could
观
you
察的时候呢，
establish the
其实
realm of
耳根
ear
是这个耳朵是
consciousness?
身体的部分，那身体的部分的话，
So
它
over
的
here
对
it
境
is
是
says
这个
that
触称。
the
它触
ear
称的
is
话
part
呢，
of the
那就是
body, and
依
this
靠
is
触
the
称和依
body's
靠这个身
object,
体两个结合
the
起来，
body being
结
the
果呢就
subject,
是
and
产
then the
生的这
object
个
is
这
touch.
个圣事，就是并不是二
Well,
世。
the
那
ear
这
is
样一来的
connected
话
to
呢，
the
如果
body,
你真的从耳朵听的话，那
then
就是那
the
你的
ear
二
should
世是怎么
also
建立
receive
的
the
啊？就是怎
consciousness
么
of
成
the
立的？
body,
所以
rather the object of
真的
touch,
是
and
很
then
会这
it
个
becomes the
这
consciousness
从这
of
个耳
body
朵上
and
面的去
not
分
the
析这么多的
consciousness
问
of
题，
ear.
就是还是就
The
我
Buddha
们
is
还是很佩服
quite
的，对吧？就
excellent,
是
isn't he?
这个每个人的耳朵
Simply
从小都
through
是有
the
的，但是从来没有
years,
想
he
过，对
would
吧？
be
我
able
是
to
没有想过，
elaborate
你
so
们可能会
much
想过，经常想过的。
to
这
explain
个听到
and
的声
delve
音是从
into
耳朵里面来
the
的嘛。
very detailed
但这样的话呢，你
analysis
看这
just
个
through
二
the
世的话
ear
呢，就是
faculty
也不
and
成
ear
流。
consciousness.
这是第一个方面的观察，
This
就
is
是
the
刚才
first
这个
aspect
从
of
耳根这
making
个产
the
生呢，还是
observation.
这个
Does
声
it
音
come
产生呢？
from
就
the
是这个。
ear
那么现在
faculty, or
第
does
二
it
个方
come
面产
from
生，
the
若声与
sound?
声，
Then
是
the
因
aspect,
真
the
无
next
则
aspect,
不
suppose
管闻。
it was produced from
下
sound.
面的这个稍微难
This
懂
part
一
is a
点
bit
啊，大家
difficult to
要注意啊，
understand, so you
耳朵
should
打
pay
开
more
啊。
attention. Open up your ears.
然而，如果你说
If
是
the
这个
consciousness
就刚才那个
existed
听闻
because
啊，
of
就是
sound,
就是
then
这
it
个
would have no connection with
二世
hearing.
就是耳朵听闻的那
Previously,
个
we
视
talked
觉的
about
话呢，
how
应该
the
是这个从
consciousness
这
through
个外面
hearing
的这个声音当中就是出来啊，就外面的听到的这个声音
were
当中。
produced from the
那这
ear
样的话呢，
faculty,
就
and
是
over
这个
here
声音
is
呢，
saying
是
that
因
if it
声
were
有，就
produced
是
from
那
the
这个
sound,
二世的话呢，就是应该有这个有声音，就是才有的。那这样的话呢，就
it
是
is
声音
to
才
say
有的
that
话
the
呢，跟你自
consciousness
己的
exists
耳根
because
和
of
跟你
sound.
个人的话呢，没有什么
Then
关系，就是则
in
不
that
妨
way,
就是
it
那
would have no
因为
connection
本来
with
是我们
hearing.
是依靠我的耳朵来就是
Then you
听
don't
到这
need
个
your
声音，
ears.
对吧？
You
但是呢，
don't
如
need
果
your
是这
ears to
个
listen
这个
anymore,
这个
since
听闻的话呢，
the consciousness
是外面
existed
的这个
because of
声音而
sound.
来的话呢，那就是声音就有了这个就开始有听闻了。所以你个人的这个身体和个人的耳根呢，就
Your
没有什么
body
关系，
and
跟你有什么
your
关系
ear
对就没有
faculty,
什么关系了。
it
如
really doesn't have
对
any
就是
connection to
无闻
consciousness
则
anymore, to your
忘
hearing consciousness anymore.
无闻则忘声相所
Without
产
hearing, then the
如果就是
characteristic of
说啊，
sound
就是
would
说
have
这
no
个
location.
你就没有就是
If you were
听
to
闻
say
啊，就
that
没有听闻的话，那
there
就
is no
则已经
hearing,
什么呢？
or
就是
at the
声相
time
就
of
已经
not
没有
hearing
了，因为
anything,
你刚
in
才说
that
是外
way,
面的这个
there
声
is
音
no
而产生的。
characteristic of
如果声
sound,
音而产生的
or
话
the
呢，
sound
就
characteristic would have no location at all.
那这个声响呢，就是到底在哪里啊？就是没有这个事处了啊。比如说
If you don't hear anything, where is the location? Where is the characteristic of the sound located?
在哪里呢？就是怎么知道呢？就是根本没办法分的。像聋子为什么听不到声音呢？因为他没有听到声音。
Deaf cannot hear sound. A deaf cannot hear, right? Cannot hear any sound. If the sound were to come from the outside, from the object,
如果跟你没有什么关系的话，你肯定听不到。你
the
没有听到
sound
的话呢，那这个声响呢，
consciousness and the
在哪里
sound
就是根本不知道。
doesn't have anything to do with you because you can't hear it. In the Dharma Shrine Hall right now, if someone's giving a teaching, then we would be able to hear the sound, and then we would be able to recognize the characteristic of the sound. If the ear consciousness comes from the sound, then it has nothing to do with your ear faculty. If you can't hear it, then what is the characteristic of sound? So it doesn't have any location anywhere at all. But this doesn't happen at all. This is not the case. Suppose the consciousness existed because of sound. Also, suppose the ear consciousness existed because of the sound. Given that the sound exists because of hearing, which causes the characteristic of sound to manifest. If you were to say that the sound, it comes from the sound, and you would hear first, and then there's the characteristic of sound. If you were to say that, then you should also hear the hearing consciousness. So after claiming that it comes from the sound, then you have to hear it, then there's the location of the sound. So your ear consciousness should also be able to hear the ear consciousness. Why is that? It is because the hearing comes from the sound, and your hearing definitely have consciousness, because without consciousness you will not be able to hear it. To be able to hear the sound, then you are saying that you're hearing the hearing consciousness. Without the consciousness being part of it, you will not be able to hear it. So at that moment, not only you hear the sound, you also hear the hearing consciousness. If you do not hear the hearing consciousness, then you will not be able to hear the sound, which can no longer be stated as the realm of sound anymore. If the hearing consciousness is not heard, then there is no realm out of the 18 realms. There is really there cannot be such kind of realm. If it is heard, then it is the same as sound, since you said that it comes from sound. If the consciousness itself is heard, our consciousness is supposed to be subject rather than object, but now you're saying that the consciousness itself is heard, therefore it also becomes the object. Who is it that perceives and hears the consciousness then? Now the sound has also the consciousness that it is both hearing and to be heard. In that way, who is that perceives and hears the consciousness? If there is no perceiver, then in the end you would be like grass or wood. If you were to say that this hearing doesn't have consciousness, if you were to say that there is no perceiver, then you are basically saying that you are just like grass or wood, since there is no consciousness. It's a little bit confusing over here, but if you can follow the logic, it should be understandable. Our ear consciousness, if it comes from sound, then is there hearing? If you were to say that there is hearing, but my ear consciousness and ear faculty did not get involved in this, then you're simply saying that there is hearing inside sound, which means that there is consciousness within hearing and the sound. Because without consciousness, you will not be able to hear. If there is consciousness, then when we're listening, when we're hearing, we are not hearing the sound, we're hearing the consciousness, which means that the object becomes also the subject. The consciousness becomes the object. It is just like someone with the miraculous hearing capacity would be able to hear the ear consciousness. Not only he can hear his own ear consciousness, he can also hear others' ear consciousness through the sound. Do you understand it? Well, I think I understood it. I mainly understood it. I know it's a bit confusing, but this is the logical analysis. If you can look into it and study it further, you should be able to understand. If you really don't understand, then you can ask each other and try to get someone to help you out. Some people have rather really fast understanding, and then they will be able to understand it through once or twice. Some takes 3 tries and some takes 5 tries to understand. But then we have the after-class tutoring sessions, and then you can also ask the others. In the sutra, it says that nor is it like that the sound and hearing mix together to form a realm in between. Previously, we have already refuted that the consciousness comes from the ear faculty, and the second one is refutation that consciousness should come from the sound. The third one is coming from the mix together. Over here it says that the ear consciousness should not be a product with the combination of sound and hearing mixed together, since a realm in between could not be established. The ear consciousness, if you were to say that part of the consciousness receives a part of the object, that is the sound, and then a part, and it also works with the ear faculty. So a part of the consciousness also works with the ear faculty. But then what is this ear consciousness? After this observation, you would be able to understand that there is really no place for the realm to be in between. When we're searching for the ear consciousness by making such observation, it is just like the observation in Madhyamika teachings. There is no self in object, there is no self in the mind, there is no self in the middle either. There is no self existed in between. But where is the self which could apply over here? Where is the ear consciousness? We would not be able to find it either. In this way, the ear consciousness cannot be established from the mixture of the faculty and the object. This is to refute the existence of in-between or with a combination. And then it says that, therefore, you should know that as to the ear and sound creating the conditions which produces the realm of the ear consciousness, none of the 3 places exists. Thus, the ear, sound, and the sound consciousness, these 3 do not have their origin in cause and conditions, nor do their natures arise spontaneously. So the realm of sound, according to the realm of the ear, sound, and sound consciousness, or sound realm over here, according to the Buddhist logic, it is, we would say that the ear faculty and the sound and the ear consciousness, sometimes we would also say the sound realm, which is equivalent to consciousness. So these three do not have their origin in causes and conditions, nor do their natures arise spontaneously. Rather, the manifestation of such is just a wondrous function of Buddha nature. The sound, we're listening to sounds at all times. Some of our fellow Sangha members listening to all kinds of sounds all the way from beginning to the evening. But today, in the Surangama Sutra, it says that there is nothing that we can hear, and there is nothing in our ear faculty, and there is no sound in the sound. There is no ear consciousness. You can contemplate upon that. The ear consciousness, the sound, and the ear faculty cannot be obtained. Through these kinds of analysis, we would be able to understand that nothing truly exists in absolute truth. After understanding it thoroughly, then we would be able to explain it to the worldly philosophers and the theorists, and we can make analysis to them. And we would be able to ask questions and saying that where does the ear come from? Does it come from the sound? Does it come from your ear faculty, or does it come from your ear consciousness? After making such analysis, they would have to come to the same conclusion. And since I believe no one could surpass the wisdom of the world honored one. That was the ear consciousness. Let's look at the nose consciousness. Moreover, Ananda, as you understand it, the nose and smells create the conditions that produce the nose consciousness. Ananda stopped talking all at once. Ananda is very quiet, and it's a little bit difficult to adjust to him being completely quiet. He kept on talking at the beginning, but now he's not responding to the Buddha. But the Buddha kept on addressing him, saying that Ananda, Ananda. He's definitely there, but he's not really speaking something. The Buddha over here says that, moreover, Ananda, as you understand it, the nose and smells create the conditions that produce the nose consciousness. Is it that by the nose, the faculty and the smell, so those as conditions which could produce the nose consciousness? Is it consciousness produced because, is the consciousness produced because of the nose, such that the nose is its realm, or is it produced because of smells, such that the smells are its realm? Usually we would say the nose consciousness, but we don't say smell consciousness, right? Do you remember why it is not the smell consciousness, rather why it says it's the nose consciousness but not the smell consciousness? Is it? Do you remember? According to the treasury of valid cognition or Abhidharma. Do you remember why? No, you don't remember?
为什么呢？不公义肯定是那禁也是不公义呢。不是增上也是，但是
It is definitely the not shared causes, but I can't quite remember because it's been 20 years since I last studied Abhidharma. Maybe next lifetime I will study Abhidharma again. Abhidharma sometimes it could be very useful. I should have memorized Abhidharma. That would be better. Next time, in the next class, if some of you are really proficient in Abhidharma, then you can come closer, sit closer to me if you can answer my questions at all times. Over here, the Buddha asked, does the smell consciousness come from the nose, or is it produced through the smells? Suppose, Ananda, that the nose consciousness were produced because of the nose. The nose consciousness is the one that knows that incense smells good, and then when you go to the toilet, you know that it's stench over there. So that's the consciousness. And then over here, the Buddha asked, well, the smell object, in the Chinese character, smell is the same character to fragrance, so sometimes it's a little bit difficult to differentiate the two, whether this is a smell, whether it means smell or fragrance. But over here, what it means is smell. The Buddha over here asked, well, if you think it is a production, the consciousness is a production of your nose faculty, then you need to tell me what your nose faculty is. So what do you take to be the nose? Do you hold that it takes the form of two fleshy claws, or do you hold it as an inherent ability of the nature which perceives smells as a result of movement? The two claws or the two sides of the nose, of the nostrils. In the sutra, it says it's two claws, but it's the two sides of the nostrils. But nose is no other than this dough-shaped, made of this dough-shaped and flashy object. Now the Buddha asked, where does it come from? Does it come from this flesh, or does it come from the two claws, which are the wings of the nose? Where does it come from? Over here, if the person were to say that the consciousness comes from the nose faculty, does it come from the flesh, or does it come from the awareness? The awareness refers to the consciousness. Suppose you hold that it is a fleshy claws, the nose, the wings of the nose, which form an integral part of your body. Since the body's perception is touch, the sense organ of smelling would be named the body instead of the nose. The nose claw, the fleshy claws, or the wings of the nose, whatever it is called, this nose that we have. Someone may have a smaller nose and some may have a big nose. Whatever big or small nose, if it were whatever kind of shape it is, big or small, and whatever shape it is still part of your body. And the fleshy part, since it is body, and then the body's awareness is touch, in this way it should be named as body rather than the nose. So the name should be, so the object that is perceived by body is touch. It is no longer smell. We can see that the logic of the Buddha sometimes goes here and sometimes goes there. It's very hard to hold on to it. According to the Abhidharma, the nose faculty is divided into the two types of faculty. The tongue faculty is like a half moon, and the eyes are like a type of flower. And for the nose faculty, what's the description? A brass tube. There are different shapes. That's described in Abhidharma. I really can't remember too much of the teachings from Abhidharma. Initially, I wanted to translate the great commentary of Abhidharma, but it seems that life is too short to do that. Anyhow, when it comes to the nose, if you were to say if you were to point to the fleshy part, then that fleshy part is the part of the body. Then the nose should be considered as part of the faculty of the body rather than the faculty of the nose. If you were to say that out of the faculty of the body there is the production of the consciousness of nose, that is not reasonable. The sense organ of smelling would be named the body. Over here in the sutra it says that since the body's perception is touch instead of nose, and the objects of smelling would be object of touch, since it would not even have the name nose, how could a realm be established for it? If you could not find the nose consciousness, if you cannot find the nose faculty there, how could you find the if you can't even find the name of the nose faculty, how would you be able to find the consciousness that is the nose consciousness? Therefore, this is not reasonable. Now, the next one is also unreasonable. How so? Over here it says that suppose you held the nose. Suppose you held that the nose was a perceiver of smells. Then in your mind, what is it that perceives? If you think the smell is knowing, then in your mind, what is the smelling in your nose? To further analyze it, it is divided into three parts again. Suppose it were the flesh that perceives, the flesh, because the nose is made by the flesh, right? Basically, what the flesh perceives is object of touch, which has nothing to do with the nose. This analysis is the same as the previous one, because nose is part of flesh, and then the flesh is part of the body, therefore the perceived object is touch instead of smelling. So the object that is perceived is touch. How could the consciousness be the nose consciousness? That is not reasonable. Now, the second aspect is that suppose it were emptiness that perceived, some air that enters into your nose that you can feel. So what about if it's emptiness? This is not reasonable either. How so? Then emptiness would itself be the perceiver. The emptiness would be self-aware, and the flesh would have no awareness. So the emptiness would know. The emptiness would be able to smell, but your flesh would not have any feelings, any sensations or awareness. Thus, emptiness space would be you, and since your body would be without perception, Ananda would not exist. On top of that, if emptiness knows, then your body would not know, because emptiness would be Ananda. In this way, Ananda would not exist, because Ananda would be empty, right? Your nose shouldn't have any awareness, your body doesn't have any awareness, and emptiness is aware. So in this way, Ananda can you or can you not smell this smell? If you were to say that you can smell, you can smell the fragrance or that particular sense, then you're saying that you're smelling, and you're saying that you smell with emptiness, then you become emptiness, because your body would would be without awareness, rather the emptiness would be aware, and you, Ananda, would be emptiness. You would be there, you would become space. So obviously that is not true. Ananda, by relying on your nose faculty, you already smelled the sense.
就是刚才不是说，如果用臂的这个修气，就嗅着的话，
So what you're saying over here is contradictory to each other. Previously, we've already covered of knowing the sense of smell through nose, which doesn't work because that is knowing through the body. And then the second one is through emptiness, which is not reasonable. The next one is talking about through the sense, the fragrance or stench. In the sutra, it says that if it is the smell that perceives perception itself would lie with the smell, what would that have to do with you? If the smell is if the smell that perceives the perception itself, then what does that have to do with you, Ananda, since it knows itself? If it is certain that vapors of fragrance and stench are produced from your nose, then the two flowing vapors of fragrance and stench would not arise from the wood of Arivana or Chandana. Whatever kinds of stench or smell, or a good fragrant smell, Ananda, you will be able to know that, because if you think that the vapors of fragrance or stench are produced from your nose, in this way, let it be fragrant or stench, those smells are not produced through the fragrant wood such as chandana or the stench from Aravana. The Aravana plant is a plant that produces stench smell. Though it looks really beautiful, it even produces beautiful red blossoms. But once you taste it or eat it, it is extremely poisonous. On top of that, it has a great stench. People would be able to smell that stench for 40 yojanas, about 40 yojanas away. But a chandana is this beautiful sandalwood that produces beautiful scent, a very fragrant scent. It is said that the Malaya chandana is the best fragrance. It says that if you were to think that the vapors of fragrance or stench comes from, it is no other than a product from your nose, then the Aravana or Chandana would not produce any of the other smells, let it be good or bad. Given that the smell does not come from these two things, when you smell your own nose, is it fragrant or does it stink? Your nose then should have a character of either fragrant or stench. If it carries the character of stench, then you will never be able to smell fragrance. If it carries the characteristic, it will not be able to smell stink at any time. So the Buddha said that when you smell your own nose, is it fragrant or does it stink? What stinks does not give off fragrances. What is fragrant does not stink. One person can only have one nose consciousness. If it is of two nose consciousness, then that would make one person into two consciousness, into two persons. Suppose you say you can smell both the fragrance and the stench, then you, one person, would have two noses, two nose consciousnesses, which means two people. I would now be addressing question to two Ananda, which one is you? Ananda at this point doesn't really want to say anything because the Buddha at first turned Ananda into space, and now through debate the Buddha said that, have you now become two Anandas? Do you understand this analysis, this particular logic by now? Over here, he said that suppose you know that through the smell, but smell is the object. If the smell, which has two possibilities, let it be fragrant or stink. If there's the two solidly existent character attached to the smell, let it be either stench or fragrance. At the time of being perceived by the nose consciousness, it could either be fragrant or stench. If it changes from one time to another, then it is not truly existent. So that's the problem over here. And then the Buddha continued to say that suppose there is one nose, the fragrance and the stench would not be two. If nose consciousness is one consciousness, but the fragrance and the stench would not be two. In this way, since stench would be fragrance and fragrance would become stench, there would not be two natures. Thus, what would make up the realm? Over here in the Chinese translation, the fragrance is the same word with smell. So you need to look carefully at that word, whether it means fragrance or smell. Now we've already covered the three aspects. The first one is through the flesh, second one through emptiness, and third one through smell. These three can be understood as the three outlines. If the nose consciousness were produced because of smell, it follows that it is in existence just because of smells. If nose consciousness need to rely on the smell to be produced or to exist, if we do not need the faculty, rather, we only need to rely on the smell. Let it be the fragrant incense or the stench feces. Whatever kinds of particle of smell there is, it could be stench or fragrance. Again, over here, the Chinese language is kind of confusing because of the two words are so similar. The two words are exactly the same, rather. It's just the way that is used sometimes it differentiates. But in the Tibetan language, it is not stated this way. Anyhow, over here, the Buddha says that if you were to say that nose consciousness rely on the particle of the smell to be produced, then the Buddha gives an example, said that just as the eyes can see but are unable to see themselves, eyes have the property of seeing, but eyes cannot see the eyes themselves. So too, when it comes to the nose consciousness, if it exists because of smells, it would not be aware of smells. If you were to say that the nose consciousness is produced by smell, your nose consciousness, by relying on the smell, it should not know smell either, because just like how the eyes could see the object or the other people or the other things, but it cannot see itself. For the same reason, the smell consciousness would not be able to know the smell. So how could a nose consciousness does not know smell? That would no longer be a nose consciousness, and that is not possible. If it is aware of smells, then it is not produced from smells. So if you're aware of the smells, since it is reliant on the smells to be produced, and at that time, if it is aware of the smells, then it is not produced from smells. It is not relying on smells. Does this nose consciousness aware of the smells? If it is aware of the smells, then it is not produced from smells, because smells would be the object. If it had no awareness, the realm of smelling would not come into being. If you were to say that there is awareness to the smell, that is not possible. How would you be able to say that the smell, which is the particles or the objects, as an object, the smells could not have awareness. It's just the sound. The sound doesn't have consciousness, or the forms doesn't have consciousness. It's the same thing. It doesn't have awareness. It's for the same reason. If the consciousness were not aware of smells, then the realm would not be established from smells. If you were to say that the nose consciousness cannot be aware of the smell, let it be good smell or bad smell. If the nose consciousness cannot discern it, then how could you establish realms? The nose consciousness, if it is without the ability to discern the various smells, to be aware of the smells, then how could you establish the realms? That is not reasonable. And then the last one is on the mixture. Let it be the mixture of the faculty and the object. Since there is no intermediate realm of consciousness, there is no basis for establishing anything internal or external. Therefore, the nature of smelling is ultimately empty and false. There is nothing that is in between. There is nothing that is inside or outside. For that reason, the nature of smelling is ultimately empty and false. We use the faculty of nose to smell the object is simply empty and false. It is simply manifested in such a way like a dream and like an illusion. When we truly make the observation, it is false and empty. And then as the conclusion or the summary says, therefore you should know that as to the nose and the smells, being the condition which produce the realm of the nose consciousness, none of the three places exists. Indeed, when we make the observation from the three aspects, let it be from the nose faculty, from the object, and from the object, which is the particles, or from the consciousness level, we would not be able to obtain anything that is truly existent, just like the sun or the children of the barren woman or the flowers in the sky. That is exactly the same. In this way, thus the nose smells and the realm of smelling, these three do not have their origins in causing conditions, nor do their nature arise spontaneously. We will stop here today.
Those of you who don't understand what we just learned from the Surangama Sutra, it's better for you to contemplate further and to really engage in the study and the discussion as well as tutoring sessions of the Surangama Sutra, because right now you're during the period of time of study, and you have the dedicated time to study, and later on you probably don't have that opportunity anymore. Previously in the Surangama Sutra, we've already learned that to investigate where does the sensation of smell come from? Does it come from the root that is the nose, or does it come from the fragrance dust? What is the root of nose? You should make further investigation. Is it of the wing of the nose, or is it of the flesh that we call this organ that we call nose? Or is there a sensation that's being produced within the nose root? Is the sensation a sensation of the body? Is it of emptiness, or is it of fragrance? If you were to make the observation in such a way, you would be able to see that the fragrance dust is not produced in the object phenomena, and then you can make such investigation. Now, if you understand the whole logic of this investigation, then you will be able to understand this section of the teaching given by the Buddha, because the Buddha would not teach randomly without any reason at all. We will stop here today.